Good evening, everyone. My name is Luciane Bauca from the Democratic Services. I have just started the live streaming. The meeting is being live streamed to YouTube. As this is the first meeting of this municipal year, the first item on the agenda is the election of chair. So I'm going to start by asking members to nominate a chair. Chris?
Could I nominate Councillor Rowland for chair, please?
Anybody second it? Rob? Could I have a vote for Beth Rowland, please? Yeah, yeah. Okay, I can confirm that Beth has been unanimously. Beth, over to you now.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to nominate Councillor Rob Comer.
Thank you. Yes, Chair, we have apologies from Basit Alvi, Rebecca Magetz, and Adrian Mather.
Minutes of the previous meeting, page 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Are you happy that I signed those as a record of that meeting? Thank you very much. Any declarations of interest? No. Do we have any public question time? Any public questions?
None.
Any town and parish questions?
No.
Any councillor questions?
No.
I quite like this speed. Right, fees and charges for licensable activity 26-27. Kieran, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I believe members have been circulated an updated report document this evening, which I'm grateful for. I believe may require a show of hands possibly to include the amendment to the report. Or, so the amendment to the report, the late amendments, my apologies for the late amendment, but we have David Trail, who may want to introduce himself. He's our environmental consultant, is with us for a few months, and we've been reviewing some of the fees and charges, and there's going to be a long work involved in the fees and charges going into next year. But one of the striking matters that came across that we felt would be something that we could resolve quite quickly was this matter around an inspection fee for animal welfare licensing, and I'll go into more of that in the report. So there's a request to, I think we just lost Luciane. I don't know if we can carry on.
No, let's just give a chance to come back.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the request will be to include that as an amendment this evening. And I may have.
So is that the only amendment?
So I have to take this off. That's the only amendment. Yeah.
Looks like we're having some technical problems.
No, you carry on.
Okay.
It's just a case of the screen.
Okay.
Fine.
Great. So we have Rachel.
Rachel's got a hand up.
I was going to say, I think we've got some technical problems. I can hear you fine, so it's not giving me a problem. But for the purposes of broadcasting to YouTube, it could potentially be a problem, although the audio is very, very clear.
Should we just see if we can get it right?
They switch each other off. Yeah, but they don't switch each other off anymore. They used to. They don't. Okay. No, it's just, I was just going to say it's ironic that 2 seconds ago when I walked past, he said that it was working fine, they just tested it.
Just if there's anybody watching on YouTube, we're just trying to work out the technical issues.
I think if we could just be extra, I think we all are anyway, but if we could just be extra mindful to use the microphone speakers. May I introduce the amendment to the report with a show of hands, please?
To accept the amendment that was circulated this afternoon.
The new papers.
215 and 260.
Yeah.
Pauline wants to say
Sorry, Pauline.
Sorry, surely I have to discuss them first? I don't mind discussing the amendments, but we can't just accept them without a discussion, can we? Or are we accepting the fact you've amended the thing that we're now going to discuss?
Yes.
Which is it?
The second one.
I'm grateful. Forgive me for asking for the raise of hands. I don't think that was the correct etiquette, which was a strange experience to me. So I'm grateful for that. But if I can go through the report, this is a fees and charges report. It's relating to our licences, permits and registrations that contribute to the cost of administering the council's function as a licensing authority. The recommendation before you is that the committee notes that the fees set out are Appendix A and Appendix B as part of the council's annual fee setting process, and that the committee recommends to the executive to adjust the fees proposed in this paper in relation to those fees which are discretionary to set. The paper itself, it sets out the fees and charges proposed for licensable activities in 2026 to 27. It is necessary that discretionary fees are increased by 5%, rounded up to the nearest pound for clarity, and that's to maintain the cost of the operational administration involved as a licensing authority. The background to these calculations: licensing authorities themselves are required each year to review their fees and charges. A significant number of our fees within the licensing field are actually set by government statute or regulation, and therefore they cannot be amended. So there are statutory fees, and they're set out as Appendix A. The fees that are within the council's discretion to set, so known as discretionary fees, they're set out in Appendix B, and it is the 5% increase which applies only to the Appendix B. Income from licensing fees should be no more than the cost of maintaining the licensing service, and the service should aim to be cost neutral, with fees balancing out over a 5-year period. Our council has faced considerable challenging cost increase in recent years, and we've commissioned work that's been undertaken with Sitfa Consulting to review our fees and charges against Bath Council, who are considered best in practice in local authority. In order to cover the increasing operational costs, it is recommended that a 5% increase to discretionary fees is necessary. This is a measure to oversee that the administrative management of licensing regimes, including any supported licensing related crime reduction initiatives are adequately covered. In so our for your own information, our neighbouring authorities make up the Public Protection Partnership. They've tabled or proposed a 7.2% increase to their fees and charges for 2026 to 27 to give some perspective in terms of the landscape or local landscape. Income sustained from licensing fees is endeavoured to offset the costs to the council itself of administering the licensing service. Our colleagues in finance have put together a table of staffing expenditure.
Can you stop while
Yeah.
they're talking over here?
Made no difference.
Yeah.
Just makes it slightly bigger.
Yeah.
Stop frowning.
Sorry, there's two
It's only going to be a short meeting.
Yes, yes. Oh.
It's only going to be a short meeting. If we get going.
It does, I'm watching on YouTube, you can hear everything and individuals.
Okay, that's your sorry, everybody.
May I continue?
Okay.
Can I just take you all to the financial detail in the report at 2.6? What you'll see there is a chart that shows the staffing expenditure. The staffing expenditure that's been tabled. The staffing expenditure relates to the licensing service in terms of a service manager, and then those that report to the service manager. It doesn't take into account environmental health officers that also contribute to the licensing service. It doesn't take into account trading standards aspects that contribute to the licensing service. So it's very much a case of a strict sort of binary look at the licensing service from a manager perspective and the costs of the staff involved. So what you're seeing there is the staffing expenditure. What you're then also seeing is the income from licensing fees and charges over the last few years. Our figures obviously only date back to the 2022 to 23 because that's where we moved away from the PPP and become our own service. So that's where our figures date back to. You'll see that in terms of reading those figures, in black is the cost, and then in brackets with red is an income. So that's money coming in, and then black is money going out. Over the last 2 years, as a service, we've actually operated under a reduced staffing budget, and that's resulted in notable underspend. Primarily, this is due to being understaffed for the majority of that period. I've given some reflections in terms of what that's meant in reality. So our systems database officer took early retirement. Additionally, one of our customer delivery officers commenced a maternity leave, and we've run with just one licensing officer in post throughout that period. However, midway through this year, just gone, our licensing officer took up a role as a food environmental health officer with a neighbouring authority, Reading. As a result of that, the service itself, we face significant pressures, and that's leading to the appointment of a maternity cover post, the engagement of an agency worker for a systems officer role, and we've just completed a recruitment campaign for 2 replacement licensing and environmental officers, but we were unsuccessful with that recruitment campaign. I've just recently put out an internal opportunity to attract any talent within Woking Borough Council that would meet the skill set for a licensing and environmental officer, and we're hoping to have a successful campaign in that way. The estimated forecast for 25-26, that reflects the narrative of underspend. It's due to staffing constraints and pressures felt within the service. Our service is committed to understanding the full cost of our operations, including the non-staffing costs, which are not captured here. And to support this, our finance colleagues have now established budgets that should enable us to be more accurate with reporting in future years by setting up a specific budget areas for the licensing service. If we took it to our staffing budget, should we have all posts substantively filled that come under the licensing manager, that should be around 450k per year. Again, that's not taking into account our environmental health officers that contribute to this economy. It's not taking into account some of the costs of running the service in terms of just simple infrastructure costs of paper, administration, postage, etc., etc. So that could be more. But going off the basis of this is a staffing budget, then all posts being filled would be around 450k per year. The council, once again, just to reiterate, we have no power to increase the fees set out by statute in our regulation in Appendix B. It is only proposed for the increase of discretionary fees and charges shown in Appendix B, and that's based on the figures rounded to the nearest pound. In terms of the addition, this is where the amendment has come in at 2.15 and 2.16. With the assistance of a consultant in respect of animal licensing, we are looking to introduce a new fee of £269, and this is being introduced for mid-term animal welfare inspections. Any additional visits or unplanned inspections or abandoned visits undertaken as part of the animal welfare activities. I've tried to capture what that means. So the fee itself, it reflects a charge set by the City of London. The City of London themselves, they provide specialist animal welfare inspection services on behalf of Wokingham Borough Council. Our licensing officers don't inspect animal welfare premises. That's tasked to the City of London. Potentially in the future that may become a task of our licensing officers, but they have to have a level 3 BTEC qualification in animal welfare licensing, and at present we're looking just to appoint licensing officers, so we're some distance away from that. So we are set with using the City of London. There's no way around using the City of London because it's a statutory inspection programme. Historically, those inspection costs, they've not been passed on to licence holders, and the visits themselves, they represent a direct and unavoidable cost to Wokingham Borough Council, so it's appropriate that the full fee is now recovered. Introducing this charge, it ensures that the service operates again on a cost recovery basis, and that the public funds are not used to subsidise inspections arising from licence holder non-compliance or welfare concerns or any other operational requirements. Where there is an animal inspection fee, the way we charge is that we charge for the application. As part of that initial application, we charge for an animal welfare inspection, but there is a mid-term inspection at a point through the licence period, and at present that's that fee that's not actually being charged. We're comfortable in terms of the figure at £269 because it's a direct figure that we give to the City of London. So that's how that figure is. There's no increase or addition to that figure. It's a straight, this is how much it costs for us to arrange an inspection.
Pauline.
Thank you. I've got a series of questions. Not quite sure where to start. You said that other authorities in the PPP have increased their charges by 7.5%. We're increasing ours by 5%. What's the first question? What's the comparison between our endpoint charges and theirs? The second thing is, you said there was quite a lot of people missing this year. What impact has that had on services, and is it necessary to replace them all? And what's the problem with, if you've managed to operate for a year without all of them, is there any opportunity of having less of them next year? The dog boarding fees have got a long history of charging a lot and sending vets in. Have we stopped doing that? I hope so. They used to be very expensive because of that. is this City of London thing replacing that? Because it did seem rather bizarre that you could have a child boarding system without sending a doctor in to look at it, but you had to send a vet in to look at a dog boarding institution, which seemed a bit strange. So those are the first three questions.
Okay, I'll try to make a quick note at them. So in terms of the animal welfare inspections, for some licences we will need to use a vet. The horse riding establishments we still use a vet, and we need to use a vet. For the home boarding, we're using animal welfare inspectors. So they, when I was mentioning earlier about the BTEC level 3 qualification in animal welfare licensing, they're the people that are qualified to do those inspections. Potentially it'd be a greater cost if we were to use a vet. I think horse riding establishments are around £500 for an inspection, and that may well be the case, that it's because a vet is used.
To go back, is that mandatory to use a vet, or is it our choice?
I believe it's mandatory for a vet. I do believe that's needed.
Can you check, please?
I can check, yeah. And then you asked me, forgive me, you asked me about the
I asked you about the increases, so it's interesting that the other PPP partners are going up by 7.5%, we're going up by 5%.
What's the difference?
But actually more interesting is what the end point is and whether it's the same.
Yeah. Okay, that's an interesting question. Last year, when we took the fees and charge, I don't know if you were able to reflect back, but last year when we took the fees and charges paper before this committee, we completed a benchmarking exercise. So we looked at all neighbouring authorities, and then we took our fees in line with that. So we're comfortable in terms of not setting our fees in an over an inflation type manner. Obviously, the PPP can set 7.2% if they have done their own exercise and believe that that's needed, then that may well be the case. But we've completed our own benchmarking exercise last year. We're comfortable with those fees, and clearly the increase reflects a much more moderate level. Obviously, in the past, we have increased our fees at 10% and nearly 7%, 9%. So this is arguably a moderate. And then you did ask me about, in terms of the staffing aspects, and you also led in terms of, is it even possible to run? I think, well, I mean, I can speak for myself, but in terms of our colleagues and staff members, they would tell you it's been a tremendously challenging sort of period. They've all had to pitch in. Some have done overtime. We've used other parts of our service to complete licensing and inspections, and I think at the moment, whilst we're hopeful to get a licensing officer in post, we're potentially looking at using what would be an expensive contractor potentially, but we'll see how that goes, because our recruitment window is still open, so we'll have to assess that. But it's been tremendously challenging, and I'm grateful for if they're dedicated enough to watch these committee hearings, but I'm certainly grateful for what they've done this year, because they've really pulled us through. They have worked at weekends, they have worked at evenings, and this, to be frank, this has very much just been to keep our service at a processing level. There's been arguably minimal enforcement measures in what we would truly aspire to. So it's been a very challenging year, and it certainly wouldn't be the case that we'd be able to continue this any further. So I hope that answers your question.
It does, thank you. And I think the final question for me was, I would have thought with licensing quite a lot of the costs are actually legal support, because in all the hearings we have, you know, a full-time lawyer there, and they're not that cheap. I'm just wondering if that's included in the prices.
Councillor, it's not included in the prices. The figures that you're given is direct staffing costs for the team. David, who's with us for several months, we're going to be completing a piece of work that should give us an accurate indication of the true cost of the service. And we'll be looking at matters like that. We will be looking at matters in terms of even arranging these hearings and give us a bit more of a broader understanding.
Rob and then Shahid.
Thanks. I've got two questions, and one in fact relates to that 7.2 or 7.5 uplift. As if I understand it, we are not including the full cost of this service, we're only including the direct staffing costs, and we acknowledge and accept that there are other costs. Has any consideration been given to actually increasing the fee above the 5%, which seems to be what you're saying will match the staffing costs? Given that we know there are other costs, we don't know exactly what they are, but if we don't make any preparation for that this year, I assume that means next year there's going to be a significant increase, probably, once we know those costs, what they are. And if we were to do a smaller increase now, that might be, if you like, a smoothing effect, which perhaps would be helpful from the end customers so they don't get a big shock coming to them in one go. That's one question. Another question, which might be my misunderstanding, the new fee for the mid-year inspection, the 269, I noticed in the Appendix B for animal licensing, it says that the granting fee includes the initial, includes the midterm inspection. So are we charging for it twice, or am I misunderstanding somehow?
So we are not charging for the midterm. We haven't been charging for the midterm. So we pay the city. So maybe I may have to tidy up that report if it's going to go to the executive. I'm happy to make any amendments if that's the case. But to give you clarity, we're comfortable with the costs of those items because we basically pay another authority to do that. So the cost of the initial inspection is 269, and then the midterm inspection is the same price. I think for an animal home boarding, it's around £400, maybe a bit shy. 300.
In that case, I think you probably do need to tighten this up because it says, as I say, animal licensing, the granting fee includes the initial inspection and the midterm inspection.
Oh, I'm sorry. So there's an amendment. So there's a new paper that's been sent round that we've amended.
Sorry, I just looked at the 216 and 215. I didn't realise that had also changed this bit as well.
We did change that bit.
Fine, I take that question back then. Thanks.
No, well, I mean, you're correct. Thank you. And I think in terms of the other aspect around 7.2 with neighbouring authorities, and then with ourselves and our piece of work and where we may end up, we set our fees annually, so to reflect back in terms of a 3-year period going in figures, to reflect back on a 3-year period of figures that we've taken in as a service, and then the costs of the staffing. The reality is we have run this last year at a really depleted level, so it's unavoidable how low that is. But if you look at the initial couple of years, we've seen something similar where the fees have been higher, and in 1 year where we've been understaffed, that's balanced out. So I would expect that where we're still down 2 licensing officers, ideally we would get those positions filled come April, but we may not. But I would expect that where we've got a shortfall still remaining at this point, that should bring us in a
Thanks for that. But I think maybe you're missing the point of my question, which is I understand that my point is that the unknown cost, which you're putting some work in to identify the ones that are non-direct staff related, they are real costs, they're knocking around somewhere.
Yes.
And once we know what that is, which by the sense of it will not meet this year's numbers, will make potentially a large increase in the following years. And maybe it might be worth considering making an increase above 5% this year to have a smoothing effect, so you don't have a big increase the following year. I just wonder whether that's either been considered or whether that's worth considering.
I think David might want to.
Yeah, thank you. We have actually thought about that. Thank you. We are planning this year to update the whole back office system for the regulatory service, which includes licensing.
Dave, could you speak into
Oh,
the
sorry.
microphone?
Yeah, sorry. During the upcoming year, we are hoping to replace the whole of the back office system for regulation. And as part of that, we are planning that some of the work which is currently manually processed for licensing, which is the bulk of our staffing costs, will be automated. And so, yes, there will need to be a pushing up of prices so that all of our costs are met, but we're hoping that can be offset or perhaps even cancelled out completely by reducing our staffing costs. Thank you.
Shahid.
Thank you, Chair. I think David, the question I was going to ask, David has preempted that. I don't know, you read my mind, right? Two questions. One is that, Karen, just help me to understand, is this cost income supposed to be neutral for this particular service? That's what I understand, right? Just to clarify, obviously we made a profit because of the less number of staff, but in principle, we're still supposed to be cost neutral in income. Yeah, that's one thing, just clarifying. The second thing I think I was going to suggest was that have we actually evaluated or have, whether new way of doing things, new technology can be used, because this is happening across the council, where you can actually do more with less people. Doesn't mean you have to introduce more staff. Are we seeing this happening all across different domains as well, different function areas? And certainly, I was looking into some of the stuff which actually can be done, and especially in the back end, where it can reduce huge amount of hours of manual work which goes on behind the scenes, which means that we can end up making, maybe less increase, because end of the day, we need to see how we can benefit our residents, right? Which means less cost for them. That's the benefit they're going to get. But we are doing more with the same service, same sort of resources, and being more productive as a result of that. Whether it's a email triage, for example, that can be automated, a lot of the stuff as well. Digital documents, intake, etc. That's a lot of the stuff can be automated. And there's a number of other things which can be done, which, across the council is happening. So I think you went into that. But I'm not sure have we done a full analysis or feasibility of that, how much potential saving it can make for us as a council in this particular area? Or is that something you're undertaking at the moment or plan to undertake?
So to answer, the council can legally subsidise effectively the licensing fee if it chooses to. But what it can't legally do is charge a licensing fee that's more than the cost of the service and use that licensing fee to subsidise parks or some other service. We think at the moment that we are not including in our cost calculations some costs that we are allowed to include, which Kieran has talked about. So our plan in the coming year, and hopefully we will present as part of the fees and charges report in February 2027, will be fees and charges that balance, that cover all the council's costs. So that will help the general fund and other services, and hopefully that money could be used for other things. We also, in that period, for discretionary fees, fees that are not set by the government, need to separate fees out into Part A and Part B. Part A being the fee for the cost of considering a new application, and Part B being the cost for licensees who are granted a licence. And then in terms of the second question was around automation and efficiency. So some councils, not that many so far, but some councils have implemented a portal system. So what that means, so I hope you can hear me. So what that means is, instead of filling in a form, sending it in, a member of our staff spends half an hour typing it into the system. We then email it manually to responsible authorities. They email stuff back. We type that into the system. So the member of the public will apply online. That will go straight into our system. So all that time rekeying is saved. And then once we've validated the inspection, we would only accept payments online or, by card. Once that's been validated, it would be automatically sent to the responsible authorities, and all the administration connected with that would be automated. So I can't remember how many staff we have processing at the moment. It's probably around half a dozen, but I think much of that cost could be eliminated. Obviously, there would be, the cost of computers isn't nil. There should be fees to pay for that. So if, in theory, when we work out the total cost of the service, minus that cost, minus that saving, then, we might even be able to reduce fees in theory, but we don't know the answer to that yet.
I'm just thinking, look at some figures, right? Obviously, cumulative income or the profit, if I can call the word profit, right? Dreaded word, is 241,000, adding 84 plus 157, right? So that is something in the kitty for us, right? And yes, I take into consideration that some of the costs are not there, non-staffing costs, but I'm assuming they're going to be small. They're not going to be very significant costs, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. So there could be a question, public as well, that if we got 241,000 in the bank, right, why are we going for still the same increase as the amount, right? And, which we're going for.
241, I don't think is the net figure. I think
I'm just adding the 84, which was last year.
That's
and
the
51.
income.
No, this is a service total.
Sorry, let me just read. Let me read so I make sure I understand.
The 51 plus 40 is how much it's
Yes,
cost us,
that's
and then
net.
84. So we're arguably balanced.
Okay,
So I think the
minus
figure you're looking at is just the income. Or are you?
And then there's a forecast. Our forecast this year is 157,
right.
Which is due to low staffing. I'm sorry. If you take the table, in the first year it was at 51 as a cost. So where the figures in black, you'll see that was a cost 51, and then 40, and then 84 was where you see the sort of profit. But that's effectively eradicated out with the previous 2 years, and then how we've forecasted this particular the year due to a number of factors. We're at 157 profit. Obviously, we've alluded to the costs that are involved with running the service, but that is a profit. Arguably, it's a healthier position to be in. It's not really intentional. It's more circumstantial how it's come about in terms of the staffing aspects. But we're obviously in a better position. So when we do come to do a full report and arguably a deeper dive, then we should get more detail around the actual figures. But in terms of the years, because that's a forecast. So if we're looking just at the years that have just gone, we're on balance.
Okay. So potentially we could be in a position, as David said, with the new introduction of new technology, we may not have to increase in the next couple of years, right? If that is the case, obviously, in the future, if that happens.
I mean, you've got to bear in mind that these figures are inflated because both of our licensing, so the team is broadly split into two. You have staff administrative staff, if I can call them that, who do processing that I've been talking about we would like to automate in the future. And we have 2 licensing officers who are the professional officers, and their primary role is to go out and do enforcement, to raise standards for the lowest standards. Hopefully most premises won't need any attention from them, but some do. So we've been running for a while without any, which has been a problem, and that is why we are running at a surplus. But what should happen is the years the way you run at a surplus should offset the years where you're running at a deficit, because licensing is very cyclical with the economy. You know, when the economy goes down often, and we saw this most graphically during COVID, of course, when we made big losses. So it should balance out over a 5-year period. But if you are in a surplus after a 5-year period, then you generally should reduce your fees.
Okay.
Thank you. I wonder if you can explain to me what the sale of pets new actually covers.
It would be pet shops, if there's a pet shop licence.
Oh, sorry, yes, fine.
It's okay. We do have...
A cover for a private person who was actually... Sorry, can you put the mic on? Sorry, it wouldn't cover a private person whose dog had got out and had puppies and they had to sell them. Would it?
Yeah, dog breeding. We have dog breeding licences as well. A different
it wouldn't be a
licence.
breeder. I'm talking about someone who...
Oh, there's there's a threshold. There's a threshold which takes you into that where it's around making a profit and whether you're carrying on a business. So there is a threshold.
Thank you.
We do have Councillor Pauline. We do have a response around the vet question from our legal advisor. Could I bring Rachel in on?
Hello. Hello, I don't know if there's any point in you putting my camera on. I don't know if you can see me or not.
Oh, we can see you.
Oh, you can see me. I'll leave it on
Just
then.
us you can't see.
Yeah, so I'm talking to a black screen, which is kind of bizarre. Actually, just before I pick up on that vet point, I'm interested in the selling animals as pets point, because recently that's become really tightly regulated. And everything that Kieran's been talking about in terms of the animal licensing is all contained within a specific piece of legislation, which is the Animal Welfare Licensing of Activities Involving Animals England Regulations 2018. And I don't know why I gave you the full title because it's a bit wordy, but some of the sale of pets is outside of that, and as Kieran alluded to, it would depend on whether it was a business or not. But in relation to the selling of animals as pets, I can come back to you individually if you want to know. It's outside of this, but things have massively tightened up as to when animals can actually be sold as pets. So, for example, very young pets can't be sold as second-hand pets, which has almost, very much changed the pet shop scene. But that wasn't what I was brought in to answer. I was brought in to answer the vet question. So when there's an application for a licence, in most cases, as Kieran said, the inspector can, in fact, carry out that inspection. However, there are some exceptions to that, and those exceptions are hiring out horses in the course of business or keeping or training animals for exhibition. The other exception, and it isn't so prescribed in the statute, is where the inspector needs the support of a vet to make a decision. And local authorities that appoint their own inspectors hire in external vets, whereas, for example, the City of London has an in-house vet, but there are certainly some things that a vet either retained or bought in on an ad hoc hourly fee basis needs to be involved in. I don't know if that answers that for you, Pauline.
It wasn't my question, it was Kay. I've got a different question.
Oh, wasn't your question a while ago?
Oh, a while ago, yeah, sorry. I
Yeah,
thought-
yeah,
okay,
yeah, sorry.
sorry.
No. Then I answered the question about pet shops and selling of animals before I answered yours, which
Okay,
was
sorry, I was
really,
still on-
really no, it's really, really unhelpful because I jumped back to that. But yeah, vets
Yeah.
are necessary in some circumstances, and if we didn't have a contract with an authority that had an in-house vet, there would be times when we would have to pay for a vet.
I remember when we introduced vets and there was an enormous increase in charges, which was a few years ago.
Yeah, they can't be done away with under the
Yeah,
legislation.
oh, it seems very
Not-
bizarre to me.
At least since
Legislation's probably written
2018.
by a vet. Can I ask questions about the taxi licensing, please? So the charges, looking at it, you've got a charge for one, and then you've got a charge for two, and an extra one, and an extra one, and an extra one. And they vary, so they're not always the same increment because of the rounding. So sometimes for an extra one is 96 quid, sometimes it's 94 quid, sometimes it's 95 quid. Why don't you just have a standard charge for extra ones and charge the same amount each time? And what happens if you get more than 20? Is that free then? Well, so, you know, if you just had one taxi as this, and every extra taxi is 94 quid or whatever it is, it'd be much simpler. You'd have a much shorter table. You wouldn't have all the roundings. It'd be consistent, and you wouldn't have a cap at 20.
Would you, sorry, would you mind just explaining that to me one more time? So we currently charge a private hire operator licence fee, but we regulate that in terms of the number of vehicles. So
what I'm suggesting is you've got a private hire licence fee of a basic 609 quid, yeah? And then you've got a whole load of things if you've got 2 vehicles and 3 vehicles and 4 vehicles and 5 vehicles. So the difference between 1 and 2 and 2 and 3, or indeed, as I worked them out, between 11 and 12, 12 and 13, 13 and 14, is not always the same. So between 11 and 12 is 96, between 12 and 13 is 94, between 13 and 14 it's 95. That's because of the way you've rounded everything. It would be much easier if you just had one price for additional one.
I understand.
Didn't have 2 pages of +1, +2, +3, +4, and presumably got rid of the cap at 20, because if there is an extra cost of extra vehicles, which is justified, then you shouldn't stop it at 20. If there isn't, then you shouldn't be charging it at all.
It is, and I believe we can amend that before it goes to the executive, so we could take that forward.
And thank you, it's a really good suggestion.
Much simpler as well. Yeah. Stephen, and then Mark. Stephen.
Thank you, Chair. I agree that was an excellent suggestion from Councillor Pauline Jorgensen. I think that would simplify things, and I'd be happy to support what she's suggesting with that change, if we do need to agree and vote on that. My other questions, and some of these pick up on other points that colleagues have made. You mentioned about this dog fee that we hadn't had before. Is there anything that isn't listed here that is another fee where we are paying an external body that for any other service that we should include in this listing? That's my first question. Do you want all of the questions, or do you want to answer them individually? What would you rather do?
I would prefer them individually.
Okay.
So, all other areas are provided by our environmental health officers. So we have private sector housing, skin piercing treatments, so on and so forth. So we do have our licensing officers, but for some licenses, we will use the expertise of our environmental health officers in those disciplines. But they're within our service, so we don't charge a fee in the same way as we're outsourcing to City of London. So So that's not the case.
No,
It's
that's
just
absolutely fine. I was just wondering if in a year's time you'd come back and say, here's another one we missed. You know, that was what I was trying to head off.
I think in the review we're planning to do in the year, we would like to include all internal costs that we're allowed
We've
to
talked
include.
about that, yeah.
And we're not currently charging for including that cost. So excuse me. So I'm anticipating that the proposal will include that next time.
Okay, no, that's perfect, thank you. I noticed there's what appears to be a new line of a hypnotism permit. Is that indeed new? Because there wasn't a previous cost, that's a new one I'm taking it.
yes, we've only ever had one hypnotism permit in the last few years, but that is a new introduction, is it?
It's been done quite a lot. I see quite a few meetings of hypnotism groups and things. So okay, it's interesting.
They'll be unlicensed then. So
yeah,
please,
that's what I'm wondering.
Please, maybe in greater risk.
I'll let you know if I see any, so we can charge them. That's fine, because they're obviously charging for it. That's absolutely fine.
No, they hypnotise me, I think.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's why we don't see it. It's already been discussed about trying to make the costs and the income balance over a 5-year period as set out here. Is that a 5-year rolling period, or is it a 5-year fixed period, and then we enter another 5-year period?
It'd be sensible to do rolling period.
It's not set in law as I understand it. So I think it comes from the famous Hemmings case, and I think, I'm doing this from memory, but QCs that have reported and analysed the case suggest I think the case just says a medium-term period, and I think it's been suggested that's a 3 to 5 year period.
Okay.
I would suggest we probably shouldn't do it every year, because in some years you will make a loss, in some years you'll make a small surplus, and it'd be much better to do it every few years.
No, I get that. I was just interested because you've given us about 4 years in the data there, and then the text says this is over a 5-year period. We've only got 4 years. I do agree totally with trying to include the total costs into the mix. I think that's a very sound thing. Also, picking up on what other colleagues, I think there was Shahid and maybe someone else mentioned, so I can't see everybody down there, about the idea of automation. I'm very keen that we try and use the officers for value-add services, not sort of routine processing type stuff that can be done elsewhere. So using a system as you've articulated, or some other automation to do that, I'd be very keen to support that. And I just wondered if we're moving in that direction. What I don't like to see particularly is people losing their jobs as a consequence of these things. Where we are carrying vacancies, I'm wondering if there's an opportunity to upskill and train some of these people, because they already know some of this stuff, and it might be if they're interested in doing so. Not everybody wants that, but it could be an opportunity to try and develop these people so that when we get to that stage, they're actually ready to do the more enhanced work, rather than just seeing the exit door, because they're no longer required for what they've been trained and skilled to do.
It's a small team, some on fixed-term contracts which will expire. I can't remember if we've got an agency or not, and some are getting older, and we have roles to do in other teams. We're really skills and staff short in some places.
No, that's fine, but you understand what I'm saying.
Yes,
I'm just trying to look out for people. We're all individuals at the end of the day.
We're our colleagues, and we absolutely
we want to
share
value
that
them. But there may have also been an opportunity, if it suits, but you know the team better than I do. I just was offering that up as a suggestion.
And we're really keen that the 2 licensing officers we have, which don't do this work, they are more senior posts, are appointed so that the service becomes not just to send your money, you get a licensed service, you know, it becomes a service that drives minimum standards in the licence trade.
I think we're totally aligned on that one. I think we all agree. And I think the other point that was made again by colleagues already, and I totally support, is that the fee needs to be appropriate. And we know that a lot of businesses and individuals are struggling. So therefore, if there is scope to make it more efficient so that we can reduce these to encourage our businesses, because this is basically taking bottom line profit away from them. And if we can minimise that, as others have pointed out, then again, I'm very keen on that. I think you are from what you've been saying as well, but I just wanted to sort of try and encourage that direction of travel was what I was trying to do. But thank you.
Mark?
Thank you. I hope you can see me okay. I was reflecting on, I agree with Pauline, actually. I think there's, in how we present some of the tables and the data, and I'm, the benefits of being on a multi-screen in another place is looking at other councils and how they do it. Our fee structure on things like licensing inspection of taxis for renewal and new seems to be slightly at odds with some of our neighbouring authorities by as much as £5 or £6 per vehicle at the higher end. So I think I'd like to encourage you to, for the next time we see this, and hopefully it will be earlier next year rather than January. I see other authorities are taking their fees and charges on licensing in October, so there's a chance for the consultation. I'd like to understand also what the response or what the consultation process will be with the licensed trade itself to get their feedback on the fees and charges structure. I see a lot of the other councils are getting a lot of other feedback from their trade bodies and their licensed drivers, as this is, the current place we find ourselves in. It's quite a high charge. So for the services that we deliver, obviously there is a charge to it, but I'd like to understand what the consultation process is and how we engage with the licensed trade across Woking and Borough. The other thing is more of an observation. And I think the thing that always surprises me with our fees and charges structure here is it's actually the document itself is not the easiest document to understand in terms of what's set by regulation or set by statute and what's set by us locally. So I'd like to ask if we can give some thought to having a look at how other councils are presenting their fees and charges packs for next year. So it shows the ones where we have no discretion over how much we charge, and then the ones that we do have a discretion over how much we charge, just to try and make this document a little simpler for everyone to be able to understand. So part of it is, I agree with Pauline. I think we need to have a look at licensing the minicabs, etc., and the charging and how we make that work. And if there's a simpler way of doing it, it does seem that everyone is on a sliding scale. Bracknell, for example, lists 1 through to 20 plus, and each price is broken out. But I'd like to see whether we can put some thought into how we can simplify that process and make it slightly simpler. And then the second part is, I guess, the layout of the report to sort of more clearly show next year. I think I made the same comment last year, actually, to show it to be far clearer on what's set by statute rather than set by us. And then the third one, again, I think is, we're in January now, so there's very little chance for consultation or change. And I'd like to see this come earlier next year, this year, as we go into the budget setting process for the following tax year.
I think the answer to all three of those is yes, yes, and yes. I'm not, so I've only been here a few days, so I'm not fully au fait with everything, but as I generally understand the rule for consultation, it's if there's no consultation required statutorily, then it generally is down to the council. And if the council has had a practice of consulting on something in the past, then it's sort of obligated to consult in the future. Whereas your neighbouring borough, which maybe hasn't consulted in the past, doesn't have that obligation. So with the caveat that we may not have a duty to consult, I think the answer to all of these suggestions is they're all really helpful. Thank you, and we'll commit to doing them or try and do them anyway.
Yeah, my point on the consultation with the trade is that other councils do. So I know Bracknell does a huge amount of consultation work with their licensed trade body, especially as that helps them shape things like age of vehicle policies, disabled access policies on taxis, etc. So I know that's not kind of related, all of that, to this conversation on fees and charges, but I'd like to give some thought to how we engage the licensed trade to get their feedback on the things that directly impact their livelihoods. And I know we don't widely consult on the fees and charges structure itself, but it's something we should probably give some thought to as part of the wider consultation strategy that's going to CCOS soon. I'm going to make the same point when I get to CCOS as well.
And if I could add one more thing, I think taxi licensing is slightly unique in that local authorities other than Wolverhampton have the challenge of standards versus price. Some authorities, and I have never had any conversations because I've only been here a few days with councillors, but some authorities try and maintain their traditional price structure and try and ensure a high standard within the trade because of that. But the problem with that is you start hemorrhaging taxi drivers to Wolverhampton, and so I think specifically in regard to the taxi drivers, I think the council in conjunction with members need to probably, and the trade of course, need to have a bit of a strategic review about the challenges that arise from the Wolverhampton's position. I think their fees are about £200, you know, and so many taxi drivers are going that route.
It's a question for another's place, but I think the general point on I agree with Pauline, and if those other points can be taken care of, that we really should have these fees and charges. So I think a lot of the questions that we've seen tonight, just in general, are about the impact of modelling different changes. Whereas, and this is, I know you've only been here a couple of days, but in general for officers, we find ourselves in a position where it's the 20th of January now. Some of these questions we could have modelled out far earlier in an initial view of fees and charges to allow that input from the committee to test the modelling and test the changes of some of those other things onto the structures, how it goes forward into the final budget, especially with a view of what the impact on likely staffing might be, what the cost might be, what the impact of a 6% changes or a 7% change or a 4% change, etc. So I think the general observation for me, having done licensing for 20-something years, is, you know, we need to find a way of getting some of these fees and charges set earlier in the process, or at least into the consultation process for this committee, so that we can look at it earlier on in a year rather than sort of getting to the end of January where there's very little room for us now to be able to kind of make changes or model any of the impacts that the committee is asking for. So it's an observation. I mean, it is what it is for now, but I'd like to see us bring that forward next year. I'm always surprised how late we do it compared to some of our neighbours across the local area. So I'd just like to give some thought to that for next year as well. And then the presentation of the report for next year, just have a look at how others are doing it to make it clearer for residents to be able to understand, because half these things we don't set because they're set by statute. I'd love to be able to do more of a full cost recovery on a lot of our fees and charges that are set by statute for planning and licensing, especially in planning. So it's not subsidising it from all residents for a smaller number. But I'd like to give some thought to that for next year.
Yes, is the answer again. The next year's fees are going to be quite different because of all the big changes we've been talking about. So it's super important that we bring forward those proposals early and get feedback from the widest possible people in time that we can make changes before they go forward.
Thank you for that. I'd be interested if there's any stylistic presentations from neighbouring authorities, either if you could let me know now or email me some what you consider best practice. I'd be happy to scope them out and see what we can do. This obviously is an inherited report and layout, so I think where you've mentioned those comments are all absolutely valid, and I think between David and I we'll certainly set a course to do that. But it would be helpful for me to understand your perspective. So if there are a couple of councils that you've seen that have presented it well, then I'm happy to. I'd be keen to look at them, see what they've done.
Cheers, Kieran.
Okay, so I think that brings us. Oh, Paul, I'm sorry, Paul.
Doesn't work. It's working again. So just to clarify, I think we are going to try and change it so you've just got one flat incremental cost for each additional car now. Yeah. Do I need to propose that?
Yeah, you might.
Yeah, if we can agree the level.
Yeah.
Today, that'd be good.
So, given that it ranges between 94 and 96 quid, maybe we should just make it 95 and keep it consistent for each individual car. if there's no incremental cost for having, if there's an incremental cost for having more than 20, we should continue to step it up after 20, so it should be £95 regardless of how many cars there are per extra car. So I'd like to propose that. Going back to Mark's point about consultation, I've found one of the most interesting things is the taxi drivers' appeal hearings. That and actually going in a taxi, which is always very good for feedback as well. So I don't know, rather than a paper consultation, it might also almost be better talking to a few taxi drivers rather than having one of these things where you fill in a form that's got twisted questions and then you ignore it at the end. So I think having an actual conversation with real taxi drivers about the differences would actually be very helpful. And certainly one of the appeals we did recently, I thought the guy was really very interesting to talk to. You know the one I mean, don't you?
Pauline, that was the kind of the comment I think I was trying to make, that I don't like to harp on about other people all the time, but in Bracknell, there's actually a forum where there's representatives from across all of the trade, and they come together and they sit down with councillors and they sit down with officers, and it's a physical conversation. Yeah, that's. And I used to sit in on them, and they were absolutely eye-opening. And you couldn't always help them, right? Because some of the things you're always going to have two opposing views in some cases, but. Well, I mean, actually, I'm sure hearing it live.
I'm sure they'd probably all like it a lot cheaper, and so would we. So I think a decent conversation with a user group would be quite a sensible way forward. So could I propose that change to the charging and also maybe the user group as well?
Thank you, Pauline. We'll put that on to take forward and get some work done on it ready for next year.
Can we have a vote on the charging?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, can we have a show of hands, please?
Sorry, hang on. Just administratively, before we do that, I have a concern that I'd like to ask the officers before we move to a decision on setting a fee and charge structure that then presumably needs to be modelled to see what the financial impact of changing. I have no issue with the principle of doing it, Pauline, and I would support the motion in general. But I'm just concerned that in our current financial position where we have this fees and charges structure, that changing it to an arbitrary 95 because it's 94.
Doesn't make any difference, Mark. The increment between each charge is inconsistent because of rounding, and the average is 95.
Pauline. Yeah, I don't disagree, Pauline, but I think I'd just like officers to confirm that there wouldn't be a material impact on the fees and charges on the income that we receive from this line. I'm happy to support the motion. I think it's a very sensible idea, but I would just like that clarity that it's not going to have a massive impact because we don't have a huge fleet, but I would just like officers to confirm that in their view, this wouldn't have a material difference on the overall fee income from fees against the cost of the service. But I'm happy to support it. But I would just like that clarification from officers.
It's okay. I'm happy to give that clarification because, so to give some context, a lot of the operators are actually just one operators, like a one-man band type thing. So it wouldn't give tremendous. I think it's sensible, certainly sensible.
Stephen.
Right. Happy to support it in that case. I just wanted that clarification. I'm sorry, I can't see people in the room and the body language and anything else, but I'm happy to support Pauline's recommendation.
Thank you. As I suggested earlier, I'd be willing to second that if nobody else wants to.
Okay, we've got a proposal by Pauline, seconded by Stephen. Can we have a show of hands on that first? Thank you. That's
make a point regarding this, if I may. I'm just thinking, Chris, you know, if you get 20 plus, right, for example, would the residents get benefit for economies of scale I'm talking about, right? Because, you know, typically the cost, whether you're doing 10 or 20, yes, there'll be, yeah, but I'm saying, I don't know, I'm just putting it up there, right? So if somebody has a lot more taxes, right, and 20 plus or 30, would there be any discount as a result of that? Or is it that a set fee, whether it's 10, 20 or 50, it doesn't matter?
Yeah, the idea within the report is that if there is more vehicles, there's an increase in fee for those operators because of the administration and enforcement of the individual companies. So if you if you have a larger operator, you'll be paying a slightly larger fee connected to the activities of maintaining that license, a larger license.
I was making is 6, whatever the amount is, so it's 20, then it's times 20. Yeah.
So it's
But the cost
£609 for one, but any extra one is £55 more for each extra one. So it's the cost of handling one extra that we need to include. And if it's not the right cost, you're right. If it's too much, we should be reducing it.
So I don't think we're definitively able to say. I think what we are going to do over the next few months is this big review I've been talking about, and I think as part of that review we need to have especially a think about the cab trade, because of this issue with Wolverhampton that all authorities are facing, and so I think probably we should take your comments into account and just take them away and bear them in mind for when we do the big review.
Also, just the other point Mark which said as well, bring it earlier. Yeah. So I think I'm just thinking, what does that mean? Is it, December, or I'm just thinking bring it earlier. I would say September, October is possible. At least it gives you a couple of months to look at it in much more detail, because, I think, so I'm just thinking that if we have at least a vague timeline, so we know that this is what we are aiming for, and also target for yourself as well, for the team. So that's what we are working towards.
He suggested October, and I think that's a perfectly reasonable suggestion. This piece of work we're going to do could be really time consuming, but if and it could stretch out to October, and we only just get it to you in October. But if we are able to complete, and we're going to start it almost straight away, if we are able to complete it sooner, because I think the changes have the potential to be quite different from the X% increase year after year, I think we should bring it as a one-off much sooner. So if we can bring it in the summer or something like that, so there's longer to think about it, because the changes will be quite different. I think that we'll try and do that, of course.
Obviously, as soon as possible. I'm saying the latest by October. Yes. The sooner the possible.
Yeah, latest by October, but next year for the big changes, if we can do it early, we will.
I think that makes sense, because it allows us time to look at what other authorities are doing, and then bring it to the committee, so that it gives us time to amend things if we think they should be amended. Okay, Stephen.
Thank you. Yeah, I think just as has been mentioned, we have agreed this fixed income per vehicle going forward, where it was capped at 20 previously. So I think just have a look at that. If there is anything that comes through that you think might apply, that there could be a percentage discount or something that comes in after 20 vehicles or something, because there still would be an extra cost if it's 50 vehicles or 100 vehicles or something. So I think that was trying to pick up on Shahid's and Pauline's point there. I think the other point that Pauline made, which I think was sound, was about trying to create this forum where we can actually start properly engaging, and Mark was also very much talking about this. I don't want to sort of set you up to fail, because obviously you've already got a big piece of work on, so it might be something that you wouldn't want to do whilst doing this big review, but it might be something you'd want to prioritise in the following year, so that we've then got this this new proposal, if you like, to what we're talking about for October time, and then we can try and set up this sort of community forum, or a licensee forum, in the following years, so we've got a basis of communicating and engaging, which I think has got some benefit. But I don't want to lose that, because I think that was a really good suggestion.
Did you want to answer?
Well, I think you're just hearing nodding. It's not recorded, is it? So there's lots of nodding heads in the room for benefit of Mark there. From my perspective, I think you're quite right. They perhaps would lead in. So where we begin the aspects of consultation with a trade in a more connected way, that could only build. Obviously, the relationships would have to be. The forum will only exist if we get the engagement. But hopefully, if we take the smaller steps of an engagement through this fees piece, that might lay the foundations for an actual forum. Yeah, sensible. I think we're definitely that's a really good contribution. Happy to try and get that off the ground.
If Mark's got a lot of knowledge from previous experience, we might as well use some of that.
Yeah.
To stop us doing things twice. Pauline?
2 more thoughts, just whilst we're on the thoughts. Firstly, if you bring in these things back, you could bring them back a subject at a time. So I don't think the structure of taxi licensing has to be exactly the same as the structure for dog boarding. So you could potentially do one at a time to try and avoid a huge reveal in October where we all go, we don't like that. You know, you start to get some traction and you can do a few bits at a time. And the other thing is, whilst you're doing the redesign, can we do the design of the automation at the same time? So that we've got a lean process that comes with the redesign, and then we can automate it again as we go along, because I can't believe we're still paying people to do clerical stuff. Most people stopped doing that in the 90s. So, you know, trying to automate it, design it, lean it, process map it, put metrics on it, and come back with a proper design, and I've done that for years, is a better way of doing it, I think. I'm sure I'm talking to teaching my grandfather to suck eggs.
So I think that both really sensible thoughts. Maybe it might be an idea to separate out the discussions for cab licensing and the rest. I'm not sure, it would probably just be too much to further subdivide it beyond that. So the thing about automation is the powers that be, managers more senior than either of us, have decided our system is quite old and needs an upgrade anyway, and the council's strategy is to try and have fewer systems. So our service and the planning service have been committed to move to the same system. And difficulties today, I can't tell you when that is going to be live and whether the changes we need for automation for licensing will be on day 1 or day 100. I can't tell you that, but I agree if we can. I'm just cautioning that my experience of these big changes are that there's a significant risk that it won't be automatable by the time. If we're going to deliver a report in the summer for proposed charges, I suspect they might not be aligned.
So just to be clear, what I'm saying, I'm not saying you should have the automation done by October. What I'm saying is you need the process design and to understand what the metrics you're going to put in are and the inputs and the outputs and how it's all going to operate, documented when you've got the charging. You can then automate it when the team get round to automating you, as long as they've picked the right product. My one worry is that
yes,
they'll pick a product that fits somebody else and not you.
We could do that. The difficulty is we wouldn't want to change the charges to take out a big part of the cost whilst we're still bearing the cost.
No, absolutely. I think it's 2 separate things. What I'm saying is if you're redesigning how you charge for something, design the process at the same time as you redesign the charges, and then you have a whole package of this is how the charges are going to be, this is what the charges are going to be, and this is how it's going to operate.
Yeah, I agree
and then
with
you've
that,
got more likely of being able to automate it. If you leave the automation till the end, after you've decided what the charges are, my experience is you usually end up with something that you can't automate because you've designed it in a way that suits you for operating it, but isn't easily automated. So do it together.
So my past experience in the field of licensing and parking is that one of the things you need to do is to rationalise your fees so that you don't have all, like the weirdness you've discovered, the difference between car 14 and 15 and 15 and 16. So that sort of rationalisation, if you do that before you automate, the automation is far easier. And Yeah, completely agree.
Can I,
And that, and remove the amount of it, remove the different number of inputs and the optional ways of doing stuff, and just have one way of doing it.
can I just, on that particular point, I mean, the way just putting it another way, obviously you have a current operating model, right? Target operating model, right? What the model looks like. If you can actually design that by October, I think that's a really good start. And what I understand from it is not to implement it, but it needs what it looks like, what the target operating looks like. And also based on that, you can actually do some estimation as well, potentially what impact that will have on the costing as well. Based on the potential saving.
People in the room that want to do it for
Exactly, 6 people. You're saying I was just thinking I might have a calculation on top of my head. Even 30,000 plus 6 is 180,000 pound salaries. Even obviously the cost of that could be even more than 225,000, right?
So
Yeah,
broadly,
exactly.
we already
That's a huge
have,
cost, right?
we have
itself.
that target operating model, but it's not written down. And so we need to write it down, and then we need to do the detail of implementing it. But broadly, we know what that is. It's automating like I've described. It's having 2 active enforcement officers and then calculating all the allowable costs and then just finding a way of making the 2 match up over a 5-year period. And so that's what it is. We've just got to do the detail and present it to you and others.
Yeah, sorry, just one. Sorry to. Obviously, what I'm looking is there's a different elements to that. One is a people aspect, right? How many people potentially we need. Other side is your process, what the new process is going to be, right? And that's the second thing. Third is actually the system side of things, the system, the portal, whatever it's going to be, which is going to handle it. So there's a different components, right? Obviously, which will together, cumulatively, will become the target operating model. That's what we're thinking here, right? That's what I'm talking about. Talking about, right?
And that's what I'm talking about as well.
Yeah, so we're on the same page.
Thank goodness for that.
Sorry, it was all exciting.
I just hope that the membership of this committee isn't severely changed next year, after all that we've done. Anything else from anyone? Do we need to take any votes on anything?
There's 2 recommendations.
You notice I've taken my glasses on. Oh. Right, 2 recommendations to vote on. The committee notes the fees set out at Appendix A and Appendix B as part of the Council's annual fee setting process. Should we take a vote on that first of all, please, by show of hands?
Well, subject to the change.
Subject to, yes.
Although noting them is fine, you can note them anyway, it's about whether you agree or not.
Right, thank you very much. And the second bit is that the committee recommends to executive the adjustment in fees proposed in this paper in relation to those fees which are discretionary to set.
Subject to amendment as
As agreed. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.